We are closing in on November and the elections and the potential of of this virus. So the question is, will the markets drop? How will I react? What impact will it have on me and my potential retirement? You really don't want to get this wrong, and I'm going to suggest to you, you may be asking the wrong question. In this video, I will share with you what you need to do in terms of how to think about the markets and this money and what not to do. Hi, my name is Mark Singer, and for up-to-date and timely information on retirement, the markets, retirement income, subscribe to our channel and hit the notifications bell so you're alerted to when we post new videos. So I asked the question, will the markets drop again? Will it go down depending upon what happens in November or a second wave? So I want to give you the answer right now. Yes, at some point, the markets will drop. But the question really isn't that. It's how do I react? How does that drop impact me on a current basis or at some point down the road? And that's what I want to help address with this video for you right now. I would like to give you some insight in terms of some of the conversations that I have with my clients. It's been quite a year, hasn't it? But what I say to my clients is the following. If you had taken a nap on January 1st and you woke up now, and now being, we're at the end of the summer, really nothing's happened in terms of the market. You missed all the ups and the downs, all of the drama, all of the fear and fright and concern. Of course, we're not taking a nap for 8 months, but it was just a sense of to take some perspective and take a deep breath that guess what? The markets took a precipitous drop, the quickest drop from where it was since the Depression. And then soon thereafter, took the most accelerated increase since the Depression. So it went from here down to here immediately, and then from here up to here, quicker than it ever had. What does it mean to us? Is that just something that has happened now? Are we ever going to experience this again? Well, I can share with you, it was December of 2018. I was on a cruise. It was the end of the year. We typically go on a cruise at that point in time. Unfortunately, this year, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to do that. But I remember being out on the seas and thinking the only thing more volatile than the seas we were in, and they were pretty rocky, was the markets at that time. Do you remember what was happening? At that point in this time, December of 2018, it was the worst December in like the history of the markets, right? Everybody was afraid. Well, fast forward 3 months. And at the end of that first quarter in 2019, it was the best quarter that the market had seen since almost history of the markets. So we've seen this before. Yes, the markets are going to go down. But how do we respond to it? What kind of planning and preparation have we made so that we understand that this is going to happen and not to overreact? So I have 5 questions that I think that you need to be asking of yourself. I'll go by them one by one as we go through. The first question is, what is your time frame? So I was just playing golf with a friend of mine, and he said to me that he was a bit anxious about the upcoming election and that he may need some liquidity to upgrade his pool and deck in the back, and was wondering whether or not this was a good time to sell some of his money out of the portfolio. And the first question I asked him was, what was his time frame with regards to the portfolio? And he was actually working with another advisor. I wasn't consulting him per se, but just giving him a way to think about in proper perspective. I said, listen, you really have to think about this 2 years, 5 years out. Does it really matter that the market will or will not go up or down in a couple of months in November based on whatever the results are at that point in time, or whether or not we get a second wave, we really have to think in terms of time frames. So when the markets were going down precipitously in February and early March of this year, were you properly prepared to understand that markets could go down? And we weren't expecting that type of a drop, but it also went up very quickly thereafter. We can't be overreacting to, we have to be prepared in our heads to think, we're really invested for retirement. And let's call retirement a 30-year time frame. If we're all lucky and we retire in our, let's call it our mid-60s and we make it to our mid-90s, hopefully with a good quality of life, hopefully that's a pretty good thing to have. So I want to take you to my screen for just a moment to share with you, if we're looking forward 30 years, let's look back 30 years in terms of the market and all of the volatility to give us some perspective. Now, as you can see, we start here in January of 1990, and the market's going up in the late 90s, and then we get hit by the tech bubble burst that cost us 3 straight years of down markets in the early 2000s. Then we had a pretty good run up, and then we got hit with the last Great Recession, which was 2007, 2008, and we got slammed then. The market at its worst point was down approximately, I believe it was 47%. And then since then, we've had, a great bull market that really reached its peak February of this year. And then we got crushed in late February, early March, and now we're back up to record all-time highs. So what's the lesson as we take a look at this chart? Well, first and foremost, it's that the trend is up. So no matter what happens, the downs are temporary, but the long-term trend is up. Now, certainly there's no guarantee for any future performance, but we have to understand and keep in perspective that markets will go down and then markets will go up. But in the long run, and history tells us going back much longer than 30 years, we will be in a good place, and markets, again, according to history, will give us an uptick long run, and we must keep that in mind. So question number 2 is with regards to what do you do with that information and that perspective? And the answer is be prepared, understand what the journey could be so that you don't overreact. There were many people back in 2008 who took their money out of the market, and many of those did not put it in for fear of what could happen. And many of those people just did not participate in the types of highs the market ended up having because the investors were not fully invested in whatever the allocations were for their portfolio. They got very conservative. They got very scared because of an event. Same thing happened in here in terms of most recently with February and March. We have to make sure that these very short term, whether it's 2 weeks, a month, a year, like it was back in 2007, 2008, that these events don't cause us to part from our plan and what our investments need to do for us. I know that this is a lot. And what we decided to do was put together a masterclass just for you, that if you have the time, take a look, because I think we can answer some of those questions you may have to get you more informed. So click on the link below to see more about our masterclass. Question number 3 is, and I hear this all the time, the question is, am I taking on too much risk? And for some people, it's, am I taking on enough risk? And the answer is, it all depends. So depending upon what your circumstance is, what risk you need to take, what your stomach is in terms of the volatility in terms of the market. If you can't sleep at night when the markets are going up and down, then you may need to de-risk that portfolio. At what stage of life are you in, and how much margin of error do you have? And what I mean by that is if you're 50, then you have much more time to overcome mistakes in the investing process than if you're 75, right? So you could take on more risk at an earlier stage in your pre-retirement than if you're deep in retirement. You really probably want to be a little bit more conservative. So the question about risk is you need to take on the right amount of risk, and believe it or not, taking on too little risk could be as risky for depleting assets as taking on too much risk could be in terms of protecting the nest egg. So doing the proper planning and understanding where that risk is for you and what you can sleep at night with is really important, and will help you to be able to retire with more confidence when you know how to answer this question. So the fourth question, and I've saved the best for last, trust me, but the fourth question is, and we hear it all the time, do I change the way I'm investing because the market may go down now that I'm about to retire? And again, I go back to the fact that you need to keep into perspective the long-term horizon. The answer to this question usually is that you may need to make some minor adjustment to your investments. Again, depending upon if you've hit your retirement nest egg number, your retirement number, and depending upon how much income you need to generate from your portfolio. But you may need to just ratchet down the risk a little bit, because as you go into retirement now, you think about it a little bit differently, not just from a financial perspective, but from an emotional perspective. And you really need to be considerate of both elements, the finances and the psychology, and put together a portfolio that will allow you, now that you've retired, because again, in the accumulation stage while you were working, you may take on, and often do take on, more risk with the portfolio than the distribution stage of planning, which is when you go to retire and look to distribute your income. You typically take a little bit more conservative. That doesn't mean you go all to cash, or it doesn't mean you go all to CDs, or it doesn't mean you go all out of the market. There's no one great or horrible way to do it, but you have as much risk in terms of running out of money when you put all of your money into cash, or you only put a certain amount into the markets, much less than you should have because you're concerned. If you have the concern, then you need to back into doing some planning to understand what are the pluses and minuses to putting in 20% in the market, or 40% in the market, or 60% in the market. It all depends what your needs are, but the answer to the question, which is, will I change my investing philosophy as I move into retirement? Typically the answer is yes, but not by a lot. So the final question, and the one that I get asked the most, okay? Well, Mark, now that I'm doing the planning and I know what income I need, and we figured out all the other pieces, what return does my portfolio need so I don't outlive my money, right? So this is why we developed what we call the personalized investment benchmark. It is a measure of how much your portfolio needs in order for you to preserve and protect the nest egg and to generate the income you need. And I had referenced the accumulation stage and the distribution stage before, your working years versus your retirement years. We have a little bit less time when we're retired. We could take on more risk when we were working, right? And when we were working, and you might have been working with an advisor who gauged the success or failure of your portfolio against the traditional benchmarks like the Dow Jones or the S&P. And it earned X amount and you earned Y amount. Well, As you go into retirement, you no longer gauge the success or failure of your investments against traditional benchmarks. You need to have your own personalized investment benchmark, which is the answer to the question, what return do I need in order to generate the income I need and protect and preserve my portfolio? And that number, the personalized investment benchmark, which is the return you will need on your portfolio, is driven by doing your own personalized income plan. And once you generate what your plan is, then you know what your personalized benchmark is. And without going into all the details, let's say, for instance, you need to withdraw 3% from the portfolio. You've done the income planning and you gauge that I need to get 3% from the portfolio. Then if you add in another, let's call it 2% for inflation, so that, we get inflation adjusted income along the way, the 3 plus the 2 is 5. So if your portfolio at the moment generates or is geared for a benchmark of a 5% overall return over time, which gives you the income you need now and inflation adjusted income you need later, then your personalized investment benchmark would be a 5% return, and therefore construct your portfolio in such a way with the proper asset allocation that you have a high probability that you'll get somewhere in the vicinity of that 5% return. So investing, looking forward into retirement and answering that big question, what does my retirement income need? What is it? What is the return I will need on the portfolio in order to generate it? You have to come up with your own personalized investment benchmark. And this gets back to the original question, which was, will the market drop? The answer is yes. And I am suggesting to you that it really is the wrong question that you're asking. Because what you really have to ask is, listen, I know the market's going to be up and down. We know the 30-year track record. We know the history of the markets. What am I going to do when that happens? How am I invested for my retirement? And is my portfolio an all-weather balanced portfolio that will allow me to sleep at night as markets do go up and eventually will come back down? If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our channel and make sure that you take a look at our next offering on the channel.